Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing what I've been up to over this last week, my own allotment and my own garden. And I do this based on the back of nearly 30 years of growing my own food. Now this week, there's going to be a lot of mulching going on. We've also been looking at watering systems back at home and much more. But we're starting this week off down on the allotment, and I'm here at the moment, as you can probably tell, because the noise in the background of the cars going past, there's a lot of them now. Now, when I first took on this allotment over 10 years ago, that road wasn't there. I was told it was in the pipeline. It's been in the pipeline for about 30 years, and many people didn't believe it would happen. But what was in that place? There was a field, and in that field was horses, and it was lovely. I used to really enjoy coming down here. It was nice and peaceful. I still enjoy coming down here, don't get me wrong. But a few years ago, this road went in. And it's a bridge over the train crossing and to some new houses that are being built. And gradually over time I have noticed the road is getting busier and busier. But this week it's got even busier. And that's because further down the end of this road, the second part has now opened. And this basically bypasses a village on the way in and out of Littlehampton. It basically makes it quicker to get in and out of Littlehampton. On that front, it's probably a good idea, but it is annoying because the noise from the traffic going past is getting a little tedious, a little annoying. I'm still going to stick with the allotment, don't get me wrong, I've got no plans to give up the allotment, but it's just amazing how things can change. And I've got to come up with a way of just trying to reduce the amount of road noise that I can hear here to make it that little bit more pleasurable. Anyway, we don't like to grumble here. We want to be positive here at the Veg Grower Podcast, but this is one of those things that happens when it comes to an allotment. Now this week I have been doing a lot of mulching. And for me, mulching is an incredibly important thing. I talk about it a lot. And the reason I talk about mulching a lot is because it reduces loss of water via evaporation, which means we have to water less. It reduces the amount of weeds that come up through the soil, which means we have to weed less. It feeds the soil as well, which means we have to use less feeds. It's just such a good thing to do. I talk about it all the time. I recently heard Adam Frost do a talk, and he said one of the first things he said was mulch the soil. And that's something that I have always done now, and I'm getting much better at mulching. I'm doing it a lot more. Now for me, compost is the best mulch we could use. Well-rotted compost we place down over the soil, and it does everything that we want a mulch to do. The trouble is, to make enough compost to fill up our entire allotment, we need a lot of it. And that is one of the problems that I've had for a long time. So what I've been starting to do is use other materials for a mulch. Now, compost is great. Compost is the best. It's full of nutrients. It feeds the soil lovely. It can just be incorporated. One of the downsides, however, if you've got plants already in your soil and you mulch with compost and the compost gets too close to the plant, it can damage and even rot the stem of that plant. So compost is great, but it may not be the best option. In recent years, I've been using lawnmower cuttings a lot as a mulch. Simply every time I cut the grass areas, I take those grass cuttings and I place them over my bed. Now I'm cutting the grass anyway, so it makes sense to do it. It just means the grass cuttings don't go into the compost bin. Not a huge problem in my eyes. I place that over the soil, and gradually over time it does rot down and disappear. So it does need replenishing quite regularly. However, one of the other problems that we have with this is that we then have to keep on top of it, and we do actually need quite a lot of grass cuttings. I cut the grass once a week here on the allotment, my grass paths, and I find that does about 1/3 to 2/3 of one bed. So by the time I've gone through all the beds, it's taken me an entire year to cover them with grass clippings. So it is an option. One of the things I used to do was go up other areas with the lawnmower and cut grass. We've got grass roads, and I would cut the grass there to try and get more lawn clippings. That was easier when I had a petrol lawnmower. With my battery one, it's not so easy these days. So I've been looking at other things that I could import. Now, I could import a load of compost, and that would cost me, I've worked out, about £300 to do the entire allotment. That is money that I don't have, so I've not thought about that. We could, of course, import things like well-rotted horse manure, wood chippings, leaves, anything like that we could import would be useful. Instead, what I've been doing, and I've spoken about this quite a few times over the last few weeks, I've been using straw. Now, of course, this is different from straw bale gardening. Straw bale gardening, the straw bales are intact. We're getting those to start rotting down and becoming compost in situ. Straw, what we're doing is we're simply taking apart the straw bale and potting the straw around our plants on the soil. And I've particularly been using this on my potatoes, actually, as a way of earthing up the potatoes. And from what I can see, the potatoes have been growing like mad. I've had to add more straw this week, another bale of straw, and I've only mulched them a couple of weeks ago, so they're growing quite fast now. After a very slow start, they're now growing very, very fast. The straw is going on to earth them up, cover them over, and it seems to be working so far, so I'm quite happy with that. Now, straw, I can buy a straw bale for £3.50, and that is enough to do 3 potato beds. So for me, it's been a worthwhile investment. If I was to buy compost from somewhere like The Range or Wicks or B&Q, I reckoned it would cost me about £35 to buy in enough compost. So straw for me has been working as a great alternative, a cheap alternative as well. But the straw is not going to be wasted because it will rot down into the ground. It will feed organic matter into the soil at the same time. So it is going to be used. It is going to be a very useful thing. And if it doesn't rot down, we can then add it to mulches other places or into our compost bins. So nothing gets wasted. It is just such a great thing to use. Now, as I said, I've already had to mulch my potatoes again this week. And when it comes to mulching, what I like to do is just give everything a really, really good weed. Make sure there is no weeds in the soil at all. The thing is with mulching, you can cover over weeds with it. But I always believe if there are weeds there, they're going to be able to find their way. They're already off to a strong start. So I like to weaken them as much as I possibly can before we mulch them. And then I give everything a good watering, and then I lay down the mulch. That way all that water is not going to evaporate, it's going to be locked in with the mulch and everything gets a good drink. So it is working. It is definitely working. The potatoes are loving it. The broad beans with the grass clippings are loving it. We're going to keep expanding on this. I think once a week we're going to have to buy a straw bale just to keep adding to the system. It just really is working so well. We're going to keep up with grass clippings. We would like to get, and I've used wood chips in the past, we would like to get more wood chips as well. Unfortunately, the trouble is we've got to then import them from somewhere, and normally a arborist or somebody would be able to deliver them. There are websites online, wood chip drop-off or something it's called, where you can actually get wood chip dropped off to your allotment or your garden. But our allotment has some strict rules about importing stuff, and we're not really meant to let people in, so we've got to be here, and really they don't want stuff imported from elsewhere. They want everything produced on site, so it does make it difficult. Now you might be thinking to yourself, well, why are you going so big on this straw mulch this year when you said last year that it led to slugs and snails? And I think last year was just a bad year for slugs and snails. It was a very wet year, and I don't think the straw made that much of a difference, to be honest with you. So we're going okay. We'll see. Of course, we could change our mind later on this year. I might turn around and say, no, it didn't work, and I've wasted all that money buying straw for something that didn't work. We will see. This is the whole point of gardening like this, is that we can experiment, we can try different things. Now, ultimately, the plan is to make as much compost as we can. And actually, what I'm already starting to see now is a lot of our compost bins are filling up quite rapidly. So we are also looking like we're going to be able to produce a lot of compost for next year. So all we got to do is keep on top of filling all our compost bins up. It may be when they rot down enough that we incorporate some of the not so rotted down stuff into others to free up more space in the compost bins. It's all good fun. It is all the joys of gardening. As I said, mulching and compost and watering are some of the most important things that we need to do here on the allotment. And by mulching, we reduce the amount of work that we have to do. Right, it is time now for me to head on home. I've got to say, everything on the allotment is coming together now. I think we can start planting out our plants. I've actually got, as a bit of an experiment, some plants, tomatoes, aubergines, inside pots here on the allotment to see if they will survive. If they will, then next weekend it's going to be a big planting session. I'm being a little careful because we have seen temperatures overnight drop to 2 degrees C in the last week, but that might just be a one-off. Fingers crossed. Right, let's head on home. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in Supporters Club this week. Well, I'm just going to interrupt this podcast and ask, if you are enjoying this podcast, then please leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds to leave a rate and review, but it really helps us out. It pushes us up the charts and gets us found by more people who might also be interested in learning how to grow their own food. But not only that, if you also want to help support this podcast and the work that we do, you can become a member of our Supporters Club. Our Supporters Club is set up to keep things like the website and other little features that we have running. For just £5 a month to be a member, you get access to extra behind the scenes podcasts that give you a bit of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. But not only that, once a month you also receive our monthly seed pack. And that seed pack contains our mini newspaper, which gives you a bit of a checklist of things that you can do throughout that month, as well as instructions on how to grow the seeds that I also send out. Because each month you get a collection of seeds that can also be sown in that very month. If you ask me, I think it's an absolute bargain. You could not buy these seeds for the price of £5 a month. Now, as an example of the seeds that we've sent out, we have been sowing some of these seeds. We've sown some cucumber and we've sown some fennel. That is included in May's pack. Each month is different, but all these seeds are designed to be sown in that very month. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, then head to our website, theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, to find out more and potentially sign up. Would love to have you there. Right, let's get back to the gardening. Well, here we are nearly 2 weeks into May, and this sun is relentless at the moment, isn't it? I know I keep going on about the weather, but weather is such an important part of gardening. Often you find it's too wet or too dry to do anything, and at the moment this sun is just relentless. It's lovely, don't get me wrong, I'm really enjoying the sun, but it is causing issues when it comes to sowing things like seedlings and keeping some of our young plants going. And the reason for that is all these plants, especially seedlings, they need water in order to germinate and survive. And when they are young, that's when they really do need their water. They need to get sucking some of that nutrition and water to get growing. Now, with this in mind, we have been putting systems in place here at the Veg Grower Podcast in order to make sure our plants don't run out of water. Regular watering is a must, and at the moment it is pretty much a daily basis, but it does take time. And especially as I tend to use a watering can, I don't like to use a hose pipe, because we find that a watering can uses rainwater, better quality water for our plants. Hosepipe, in mains water particularly, has a lot of chemicals added to it to make it safe for drinking, but I don't find that plants do best when they are watered with mains water. So what I've done in my greenhouse, now the greenhouse of course that can get pretty warm throughout the day, and because it's not any access to outside, it doesn't get rain even when it does rain. So it really does rely on us to make sure it's watered. And what I've got in my greenhouse, I've set this up over the winter, we tried it out last year, I've spoken about it a lot, is our auto pot growing system. Now the auto pot growing system is quite simply a water reservoir with pipes run into a series of pots that keep the pots hydrated, meaning that any plants that are growing in the pots will stay hydrated, as long as of course that water reservoir stays full of water. And I've got this set up this year in the greenhouse for the first time, but we are already seeing some really amazing results. The aubergines that are in the auto pots, they look like they're growing really strong. It looks like we're going to have a good batch of aubergines. We've got strawberries already from a strawberry plant planted inside the auto pot system. Chilies, tomatoes and other melons, cucumbers, they're all planted up in these auto plot systems. They are really putting on lots of growth. Almost by the day I'm seeing the growth. And the best thing is they're never running out of water. I find that checking on the water reservoirs at least once a week is all I need to do with it. On a whole, the plants just grow really well. There's really little work I need to do with these. Now, Autopot, of course, I've got a discount code, AUTO10RVG, all in one word, for 10% off. But for me, the Autopots have been such a worthwhile investment. I absolutely love the things. We've got systems for our seedlings as well outside, which are working just to add even more to it. So for me, the Autopot is a great investment. But this brings me up to something I invested in many years ago. I've had running for quite a few years, in fact, my veggie pods. Now, I haven't really touched on my veggie pods for quite a while, but my veggie pods are a raised garden bed. I've got 3 of them, small, medium and large. They are waist height, so they're nice and easy to work on. They're filled with compost and perlite. They've got lots of plants, lettuce and carrots and things like that grown inside them. The design of the veggie pod means that they create a well in the bottom which holds onto water and wicks through the compost at much better rate, which actually holds onto water for a little bit longer. It also has a cover over the top which keeps insects and things like that out. Also keeps them a little bit warmer, which means that they get off to a bit of an earlier start. But also they have an integrated sprinkler system. Now, in the past, I have used the sprinkler system with the mains water, which worked absolutely fine, but it just didn't really sit with what I wanted to do. And I spoke last year of how I've wired it up to a water butt. Well, this week, I've been refining that. So what I've got in my water butts, now my water butts are running low on water, shall we say, but I'm keeping them available for the veggie pots. I've placed a water butt pump into the water butt. And from that water butt pump, I've got a hose coming out which splits off and feeds all 3 of my veggie pods. That's Roxy barking in the background. Now, what I've done that's a bit unique is I've used my quick hose connectors. These are hose pipe connectors. And the reason I've used quick hose, I'm a big fan of these quick hoses. We're going to get them on the podcast soon. What makes them so different is as hose connectors, instead of those little tassels, those little prongs that clamp around, these actually have wings. And that means that the hose pipe clamps around much tighter and less likely to pop off. In the past, when I've used a hose pipe using the old style, they've popped off while I've been out watering the garden, and I've got wet myself, which has been really annoying. But with the quick hose, they don't pop off, or they're very difficult to pop off because of the style of these wings that clamp around the hose. They're so much better. So simple, but so much better. Now, I've used about 10 of these quick hose connectors on my veggie pods to make this system work. And the hose pipe, I've also, from an electrical point of view, wired that into a time clock. So at 7 o'clock every morning, it comes on for 15 minutes, sprays water all over my veggie pods. My lettuce leaves, all my young plants in there are staying hydrated, and they look all the better for it. We actually really are doing quite well with things like lettuce and spring onions already, because we are getting so much of them. So there's a bit of work that has gone into it, but it has meant that it is looking all the better for it. And it's automated, so I don't have to worry about it. This means that I can spend more time thinking about watering all my other plants. Now, at the moment, as I said, we are watering daily. My beds are being watered with a watering can, which takes a while. We've got quite a few pots, which I've pot into trays, and we're trying to keep hold of water for as long as we can. Hanging baskets can be a bit of a problem because we have quite a few hanging baskets. I think what we're going to do with our hanging baskets eventually is link up a type of solar-powered watering irrigation dripper that I used to have in the greenhouse. I think that's probably going to be the way forward with that, actually. Probably going to work out rather well too. So we've got all these options when it comes to watering our garden, and best of all these are using rainwater. Now, rainwater might be in short supply at the moment. We haven't had any rain since February, which is worrying me slightly, but I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. In the meantime, let's find out what Chef Scott has for us this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty pie.
Hi, it's Scott here with this week's recipe. And this week we have the seed of the month recipe. And this month's seed, as you all know, is runner beans. Something I love to grow and eat myself. And I think you get a lot of bang for your buck with runner beans. Just a few plants will produce lots of beans. And when it comes to cooking them, I think they lend themselves to being slow cooked or braised. And last year I shared a recipe for slow cooked runner beans with preserved lemon, chilli and tomato. And that's available on the veggrowpodcast.co.uk, and it's well worth a try. But for this week's recipe, we have olive oil braised runner beans with butter beans, chorizo, tomato and feta. It's fantastic on its own, served with some good bread for a light lunch, or you could serve it with some fish or meat for a more substantial supper. I served it with pan-fried sea bass on the weekend and it went down a treat. So, let's head to the kitchen and hear how it's made. As usual, you can find this recipe and others on the veggrowpodcast.co.uk and on my Instagram page, Seed to Table, Plot 13. For this recipe, you will need 350 grams of runner beans, stringy bits removed and cut into thin strips, 350 grams of cherry tomatoes cut in half, 350 grams of butter beans already cooked, I used a tin, 1 medium white onion sliced, 3 cloves of garlic sliced, 100 grams of diced chorizo, 40 grams of sliced green olives, 120 millilitres of olive oil, 100 millilitres of water, the juice of 1 lemon, and 200 grams of feta cheese. Method: put a saucepan on a medium heat and add the olive oil followed by the chorizo, onions and garlic, and cook to soften but not colour. This should take about 5 minutes. Now add the runner beans, olives, tomatoes and water and cover with a lid and gently simmer for 10 minutes. Then add the butter beans and continue to cook for a further 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And when the beans are soft but not falling apart, finish with the lemon juice and salt and pepper. And serve, sprinkling with the feta cheese, and enjoy. And that's the recipe done. And that's it from me this week.
Well, once again, another fantastic recipe from Chef Scott. I have to admit, I said when we did the seed of the month that runner beans are not one of my favourite, but my wife loves them. But sometimes Chef Scott just has a way of making me actually want to go and eat them. And I think that's certainly the case with what he sent us this week. So thank you so much to Chef Scott once again for that. Now, you may have noticed that I've said quite a few times throughout this week's podcast that I'm getting increasingly concerned by the lack of rain. Here in Littlehampton, we have not had any rain since February, or not any rain to really call a shower or anything. And this is getting really concerning because that's getting on now for 3 months without rain. Here we are, early May, coming up to mid-May. We didn't have any April showers at all. Hopefully we will get some showers during May. I believe we are predicted some rain soon, but not enough. I don't think we're going to get enough rain, and it is a little concerning. Now, one of the things that I always try and do is store as much rainwater as I possibly can. And I do this because I have 16 water butts in my garden, all placed at different locations. But these are designed to catch rainwater from the roofs of my shed or the house. And when it rains, it fills up quite quickly. It's actually quite surprising just how little rain it needs to fill our water butts up. Now, for me, this is something that we should all be doing. Every downpipe should have a rainwater butt attached to it. I know they're not the prettiest things, although there are some out there that are looking a little bit better than others. I particularly like a company at the moment called the Dipping Tank Company. They produce some really interesting ideas. They're more like a water trough, but he's got some interesting variations such as seed trays and things like that for what he does. But that's not going to help me out right at the moment, is it? I've already said I've got 16 water butts in my garden. At the moment, only about 4 of these are full of rainwater. And that, for me, is getting concerning. Now, what tends to happen? Over winter, my water butts fill up, and the ones that are attached to drain pipes, they fill up before the others. And then what I have to do is just pump some of that water to some of my other water butts that are not attached to downpipes. Basically, where I've got space to fit a water butt, I've added another one. Now, because of this, what that tends to do is it empties my water butts that are attached to the rainwater butts. But once all my butts are filled up, I then leave it. And then when I need to water my plants, I will take my watering can, and I always start with the water butts that are attached to a downpipe. The reason for that is that obviously if we're using that water up, we want it replenished as much as possible. So by using the ones that are attached by downpipes, if we do get a shower, that's more than likely to fill. If we were to use the butts that are not attached to our downpipes, it would mean that they're not maximising our potential for capturing as much water as possible. Now, at the moment, our ones attached to downpipes are completely empty. So if we do get any rain showers, it's going to fill those up, hopefully quite quickly. And that means we are at maximum water capacity. The ones that aren't attached to water butts, of course, we're going to have to fill those up as soon as we can. And as soon as we've got enough water, of course, I will be filling those up. When we are at maximum capacity in our water butts, I also like to fill up any buckets or watering cans too. Again, just trying to maximise the amount of rainwater that we can capture. Now, because we haven't had rain for a while, what I'm going to have to do is any time that we are predicted rain, I'm going to be potting out our buckets to capture as much more rainwater as possible. It's got to be done. It's got to be done because I do think we're in for hosepipe bans this year because it has just been so dry for so long, and I've not seen cracks this early in the ground ever before. So I'm getting very, very concerned. Now, I've already mentioned mulching in this podcast, and for me that is a big tip, and I do see a massive difference with beds that I've mulched because the ground is not cracking. You go down, you stick your finger down in the soil, it does feel damp as well. So the mulching is a big thing as well, as is removing weeds and looking after our plants and just taking good care of what we have. So, you know, all these tricks and tips are going to help us out if we are in for a drought, as at the moment I think we are in for. Well, on that note, I'm going to wrap this one up. Don't get scared, don't worry, we are positive here, it will be okay. We've just got to take action to see what we think is going to be the problem. Making the most of our water is one of those. But we are coming to the end of this week's podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've taken something away. If you have, then please do leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds, but it means the world to us. We haven't had any reviews come in this week. We have had ratings, of course, so either are very much appreciated, and we really do enjoy reading them and hearing back from you. Of course, if you want to get in touch, you can always email me. My email address is richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. We do have a website as well, theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk blog post. We're trying to get a bit more posts being posted, so it's well worth checking out if you are on the internet. While you are at our website as well, you can also leave a comment on the bottom of a blog post. You can also leave us a voicemail using our SpeakPipe service. We do love getting the voicemails. Now, one thing I do want to say, if you have enjoyed this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, rate and review, of course, but also consider becoming a member of our supporters club. Details on that at theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. And finally, don't forget to find us on social media. We will be back again next time, so until then, please take care.